Can you guys hear the ice cream truck? It's just sitting outside my house. Ice cream trucks used to make me happy. Now I just get annoyed because they just sit there and they just play the music. And it's the same tune over and over and over and over and over again. Alright, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. Now, I have filmed this video probably like, this is going to be the third time. The first time I wasn't feeling too hot. I'm coming off of a cold right now. And also, it just wasn't going as well as I wanted it to go. The second time I filmed it, I did it with this degreeing wheel. While I could easily accomplish a job with this degreeing wheel, I think it's going to be much better now to have this ginormous blue degreeing wheel. This is the one that Cams sends in their degreeing kit, but this is the Moroso Pro wheel. It's on Summit. I overnighted it for like 90 bucks or something like that. So I'm going to start over. I already have this side over here. The exhaust and the intake cams are already degreed on this side. But I am going to degree these ones on camera. I'll show you guys how to degree some cams on a Coyote motor with the Moroso Pro. Well, actually, I mean, any of the wheels will do fine, but as long as you can just ignore some differences on these numbers. So this one goes from top dead center to 0 all the way around 360 on one of the sets of numbers, and then the other sets of numbers, it goes in increments of 90 to bottom dead center, and then goes in an increment of 90 from here to here, and then there isn't a set of numbers. So this wheel is just a little bit confusing. This one is 180 degrees from top dead center to bottom dead center, and then 180 degrees from top dead center to bottom dead center. It's just easier to read. So there are a few things, we'll get just straight into it. There are a few things that you'll need to do before you can degree cams. The first is timing the motor. Right, timing the motor, you're just lining up the timing marks. There's plenty of videos out there on how to time a Coyote. You use your left-hand timing marks for this, the single dark link here, and the single dark link down there at the 7 o'clock position with the keyway at the 12 o'clock position. And it'll be the 2 dark links over here on the exhaust cam on the back side on the secondary chains, and the single on the intake. And then you get the timing chain guides on. And then pro tip here too, if you don't know how to do this, there's no oil pressure that's pushing this piston out right here. So use some like C-clamps or whatever you have laying around your house just to keep the tensioners squished together so that it doesn't jump a link. So just do that on both sides. And then same thing but opposite on this side. Well, sort of the same thing. You're going to use the right-hand timing marks on the primary chain on this side, and then same exact way to time it on the back. Once you have it timed like that, you could just use the comp cams. I can put the link in the description for timing. Just use the comp cams instructions, or just follow them. They're easy enough. Then you'll be at this point where you're ready. Now that the engine is in time, you're able to spin it over and it has no interference. You just kind of like, the way to start out is just kind of put just put the lockouts, like this one's moved already, but I moved it, but just kind of start right in the center or so on both of the lockouts, and then you shouldn't have to worry about interference, and then you're not going to hurt anything turning over by hand. So just when you put the lockouts in, put them right here about in the center. Like I said, I moved this one already, so but that's a good place. That's just a place to start from. You're going to definitely have to move them. Or if you do nail the degreeing on just throwing them together, then go buy a lottery ticket, because it's some big, little tiny movements is big changes in the cam degreeing. We'll talk about a couple of things first. As far as the cam goes, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take like a little section of this. We're just going to take this lobe here. We'll draw it up on the whiteboard, and we'll talk about a couple of terms with a camshaft. Can you guys hear the ice cream truck? So a couple of things that we are going to talk about here is top dead center. Okay, so this is the cylinder, very bottom of the cylinder, very top of the cylinder, and here is the piston inside the cylinder, right, with the connecting rod right there. Okay, so top dead center is when the piston is as high up in the cylinder as it's going to go. Looking at right now, it's just like a kind of like a straight on shot. If you're looking from down here at this angle, there's, okay, that's what we're looking at. But so we're gonna talk about lift first. Lift real quick. Lift is essentially, lift is this measurement off of, I think this is called the base circle, but this is how far the valve is opened by the lobe. That's what lift is. So that's pretty simple. Everybody knows that. Duration is, well, that was crooked, but you get the idea. Duration is expressed in degrees of rotation of the crankshaft. So if your cam is up here, right, then your crankshaft is here. There's your timing chains. So duration is expressed in degrees of rotation, and that's how long from this point to this point, say whatever, for numbers, just for plain numbers, we're just going to say 100. That would be the duration. Is the valve is open for 100 degrees of rotation on the crank. That's what duration is. So that's lift and duration. And then center line is the max open, the point of max open that the valve is achieving on this camshaft. So, which is like essentially the highest, the very, very tippity top highest point of the lobe. That's the center line. Now, center line is what we're going to be working with today. We're going to be talking about when we're targeting a specific degree. In this case, it's going to be intake is 112 degrees and exhaust is going to be 118 degrees. That's what we're targeting for the intake cams and the exhaust cams. And this number, 112 degrees, is where we're going to put the center line. We could put CL for center line. Where we're going to put the center line after top dead center for intake, because after top dead center, the piston is going down, which means that it's sucking air into the cylinder. So that's the intake cycle. So we're going to put our after top dead center intake cam center line, so this center line of the lobe, at 112 degrees, which is going to be rotation, the rotation of the crank. And then for the exhaust, it's kind of like the opposite. The exhaust is 118 degrees of rotation of the crankshaft before top dead center. And before top dead center, the piston's coming up, which is the exhaust cycle. So air is coming out of the engine. So that's why 118 degrees before top dead center is where we're going to put the center line, of the exhaust lobe. And that's what we're shooting for, is this 112 degrees for the intake, 118 degrees for the exhaust. And this is going to be on a twin turbo Coyote built motor, 34 pounds of boost, and it has still stock cams. Okay, that's what we're going to be targeting, is 112, give or take a quarter of a degree, and 118, give or take a quarter of a degree. All right, so the very first thing that we need to do is we need to find top dead center, and we're going to use this guy right here, which is a piston stop. Essentially, you thread this in where the spark plug goes. I like to start kind of like right here where it's just barely poking out. Somewhere in here is a good place to start. But we just drop this right down in the cylinder. We're going to go off of this front cylinder. So we just drop that right down in there. And then we'll tighten that up here in a second. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to put the crank nut on. This comes with the Moroso kit. It's nice. It's got a spot for the keyway, and it also has a little set screw right here. Okay, so we'll slide on the adapter, the crank nut, and what I'm saying, which doesn't look like a lot, you can't even see it on camera, but when I put the degree wheel on here, that's like going to be close to like a degree of play in this. We'll snug up this set screw right here. Okay, so now this is what we want to see, is zero play back and forth on this degree wheel. So as I rock it back, it flexes obviously this way, but as I'm rocking it back and forth, there's no play in it. Pointer. So I have a really stiff pointer, and I'm also just going off of the edge of it, which makes it a lot, to me, it makes it just a lot more accurate. So I use this outer side over here when I'm taking my measurements. So we get this piston block screwed into where the spark plug and the cylinder, this very front cylinder on this bank. I like to use really long dong extension here. It just makes it obviously way easier to move the crank around. But so the piston stop is in there, but I don't think it's down far enough. But we are just going to do a rotation. So we started at about top dead center over there on the wheel. We're just going to go all the way around one rotation to make sure. There's top dead center again. Okay, so we know the piston stop's not down far enough. So we're just gonna go down in here and lower this. It's essentially a set screw. We're just gonna lower it down further into the cylinder. Lower down further into the head, rather. I'm gonna start rotating again. All right, so there's the piston stop right there. 45 1/4, just short of 45 1/2. All right, so now we have the measurement this way. Now I'm going to go back the opposite direction. One is about basically 84 on the dot. Trick here is, I mean, not necessarily a trick, but it's 45.25 plus 84 equals divided by 2. That finds direct smack in the middle is 64.62. So we'll go for 64 1/2. We remove the piston stop, and we're going to go to 64 1/2. It is about 64 and a little bit more than 1/2. So the crank is going to stay there. I'm going to remove that. So the crank is going to stay in its position. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move top dead center to right here, 64 1/2. So there we go. Top dead center is set directly. Like I said, I'm going off of this leading edge over here. So that's what was 64 1/2 is now marked with top dead center. Set up our gauge here. Now what we're looking for is we're going to be going off of this intake valve right here. So I'm going to set this very bottom portion of this the gauge. I'm gonna set it right here on top of this valve. And I want to do it as close to perpendicular as I can, or sorry, as close to parallel with the actual shaft of the valve as I can, without getting it hit on the rocker so it doesn't get in a bind. So I have it basically sitting right as close to center as I can on the valve without hitting the rocker. And then if you see, if I bounce this up and down, we're basically coming back to the same place. So that way I'm checking that my whole apparatus here isn't moving. So then we're going to go all the way to max lift. Maybe one more. Okay, that looks like it's it right there. So I'm going to move my 0 to there. Now we're going to go back and double check. Go back at least 150. There's 100, 50, Okay, that's basically dead on first try, which is nice. Don't have to redo it. So what we're looking for, right, is this center line, the center line of the lobe. So, and same thing with top dead center. We can't just put it at top dead center and say this is top dead center based on looks. What we're doing is taking two known points on either side of the rotation. So what we did was, it's almost impossible, right, to just go like there's top dead center. So what we're doing is when we did the piston block, we're stopping the piston here with a mechanical stop, and we're stopping it right here with a mechanical stop, and we're going all the way this way until we get to the stop. We're taking the number, then we're going all the way back this way until we get to the stop, and we're taking the number. And then we take these two numbers and we're adding them together to divide to figure out what the exact real center of those 2 points are, which would be top dead center. Now, with the center line, it's the exact same issue. Right, you can't just come over here to this lobe and go, that looks like the highest point right there. What you have to do is measure. We're using this. We're going off of his 150 off of max lift and 150 past max lift. So the first measurement we're going to take is we're going to stop 150 before max lift. We're going to take the degree measurement on the wheel. Then we're going to go 150 past max lift and then take that measurement. And then we're going to add them together, the degrees, add the 2 degrees together and divide them by 2 to find the center line. We have top dead center marked, and we have our lift is zeroed over here on the indicator. We're going to go back here. We're going to find max lift is right there, zeroed. Okay, so I'm going to go back. There's 50, 100, 150. So that's where we're going to take our first measurement, but I don't want to just take it here because the chains are loaded in the wrong direction. So I'm going to go at least another 100 past. There's at least like 120. And then I'm going to switch the direction. Okay, so now we're going to load the chains in the proper direction. We're going to be going at basically in the proper direction here. Now we're going to come up 150. Now we are at 80. We're doing an intake valve, 80. This is way off. Okay, so 80, 1, 2, 3 and a quarter is what I'm going to call that. 80, we'll just call it 83.5 or 83.5. Write that down, 83.5. Okay, and we're going to continue forward. There's 50, 100, 150, then 0 is going to be max lift. And then we're going to go 150 past, 50, 100, and here comes 150. Looking at 160, 161. So we are at 122 and a quarter intake, 112 exhaust, 118. So we're shooting for 112, so we're about 10 degrees advanced. So that means that we're going to have to make a change on the cam. That, I think what that means is I'm going to have to keep, so you keep this, the lockout is obviously going to stay the same, but we're going to rotate the camshaft in a, I think it's clockwise this direction. So we're going to go, I'm going to make an adjustment that direction. I'm going to go off of just kind of, it's going to be a guess, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so now our first one was 59. 177, 59 plus 177 equals, divided by 2, 118. So we're closer. 156 plus 169 equals, divided by 2, 112 and a half. Oh shit, that's a bummer. Okay, I want to try to be within at least 1/4 of a degree. So I'm almost there. I'm a 1/2 degree away, because remember, we're shooting for that 112. So I'm gonna try to correct. But again, this is not gonna be an exact science. This is just gonna be, hopefully, a really good guess. All right, team, there it is. That is 111.8 something degrees. That's what that is right there. All right, so that is exhaust, intake done. Last one is the exhaust. I'll put you guys again. I mean, I don't really think that there's anything that I need to cover that I haven't covered already. I'm gonna throw this on time lapse, I guess, to finish out the video on degreeing these cams. I don't really, it's like, once you can get your brain wrapped around, and I like this Pro wheel because, I mean, it has like your intake center line. It has your intake center line range on there, and like I said, we're going for 100 and 112, which is right here inside this range. And then exhaust center line, we're going for 118, and there it is over there in the range. So the Pro wheel, this thing is just teeny tiny. You can do it fine. You can do it fine, but as you can see, you're just going to get way more. You're going to get way more accuracy. You have a better ability to tell the difference between what number it's pointing at, because the dashes are further apart from each other. So I would recommend the Pro wheel just because it's just easier to read, and I think it's more accurate the bigger the wheel. This side's going to be tricky with this exhaust on here, because I have to get, I mean, I guess it's not going to be tricky, because what I can do is, instead of doing top dead center on this cylinder, I could do top dead center back here and then measure off one of these valves back here. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I don't know what I'm going to do yet. I might end up doing that as trying to get it off of one of these valves back here. But I'll throw it on time lapse so you guys can watch the rest of it. That is a degreed engine. Now, yes, I did have a costume change. I sweat through my flannel. It's kind of getting hot, springtimey out here. But this sucker is degreed within 1/4 of a degree. I mean, you guys saw the time lapse. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then I think one that I didn't even write because I knew it was nowhere near correct. Oh no, that one's on here, the 160. You can kind of figure out when it's close. This 161, I knew it was going to be nowhere near, because I knew from the other exhaust cam that about that 180 to 183 zone was what the is what it was liking. So and then what it ended up being was this 182.5, 53.25, and that comes out to, I think, within 1/4 of an inch, or I mean within 1/4 of a degree. Yeah, 117.875. So we're within 1/4 of a degree. I'm happy with that. I can live with that. I can definitely live with that. So my takeaways: definitely get the bigger Pro wheel. It just makes your life easier. Having a nice long moment arm here to spin this crank over makes it a lot easier, and you have a lot more control of, you know, like how slow you want to turn it. I can just turn this 1 degree at a time. Really, like, I'm not even straining on this, but just turning this 1 degree at a time is super easy with a really long lever. So and you need to be able to do that to make sure you get good measurements. Hindsight, I might have pulled the motor just because I don't like, I'm a taller person and I do not like bending over in working on this. So I would have pulled it, and then I have my stool and my engine stand. I would have been able to just sit there and do it. That would have been really nice. So, you know, just take that for what it's worth. But what is next? We have a ton of parts over here to install. I have a new toy right there to use on an exhaust. That is all new gasket oil pump install kit. It's got all new gaskets, all new seals, all new gaskets. I'm gonna torque all of the bolts, the cam bolts on, double check one last time that my degreeing is on, and then put it all back together. That should be it. Well, the intake has to come from Holly still, so who knows when that's gonna ship. But that's gonna wrap up today's video, and that is kind of like, so I really only spent time showing you guys on one cam, but it's essentially the exact same thing 4 times, and it's, you know, and if you have an engine with a single cam in it, it's the exact same thing, except for you're just doing it one time, because all of the lobes are connected on on one cam together, and there's only one chain. So that's, you know, the Coyotes, you have to do it dual overheads. You have to do it once for the intake and once for the exhaust on each bank. So if it's a, you know, a 4-cylinder or 6-cylinder dual overhead, you're gonna have to do it twice. If it's a V8 dual overhead, you're gonna have to do it 4 times. But if it's like a, you know, a small block Chevy, you're only doing it 1 time, which is nice. I think that's it. Like I said, it's the same thing. If you can get one of them done, you can do the other ones. I have never degreed a motor before. I just did the research, figured out how to do it, and that's how you do it. It's once you kind of get out here and start messing with it, as long as you get the motor in time, you're not going to screw anything up. If you're really worried about it, have somebody come double check you, but it's not as scary as I thought it was going to be. So I think that's going to wrap up today's video. Like always, comment, like, subscribe, and we'll see you guys on the next video.